Yeah, there he was, right there in the back. Some congressmen and women raised the idea of regulating Google. But would that really help the situation? Joining me now from National Taxpayers Union, where she's a senior fellow, and Center for a Free Economy board member. She does so much because she knows so much. Mattie Duppler is back.
Hey,
Welcome
Kennedy.
back, Mattie.
Thank you.
So I understand the impulse is Google is really unfair to conservatives. Therefore, as conservatives, we have to use the government to shut down Google. Is that the wrong impulse?
Yeah, I don't understand that impulse quite so much. You know, all of this conversation about whether or not Google or any of these tech platforms are biased against conservatives really ignores the recent history of conservative thought. There has been nothing better for conservative thought than these platforms and their ability to really democratize some of the ideas that you and I have been talking about in this show for years. You know, the fact that conservatives have been able to use these platforms to build audiences they otherwise never could have is a result of the fact that we were shut out from traditional media. That's why there has been such a large conservative footprint on these tech platforms. So I get very skeptical when conservatives say that Google or Facebook or Twitter are bad for conservatives, when in fact the opposite is true. Without these platforms and the ability for people to speak directly to audiences without the incumbents erecting barriers in their way, there wouldn't be conservative thought. There wouldn't be all of these great access and all these great conversations we get to have every day, because these tools have been available to people when they were shut out of the mainstream to begin with.
That's absolutely true, and that's where the fairness doctrine comes in.
Right.
And I would hate to see the government imposition of the fairness doctrine when it comes to content in tech. I think that would be a horrible idea, because, you know, it feels safe because there is a Republican president and Republicans still control the Senate. They're not going to have the House for more than a few more weeks. But when the pendulum is in a very different place, I don't think that they'll want to see that application.
Right. Let's think about what fairness actually means. Fairness means that the law is executed in a way that it doesn't matter who's in political control. And you're right. If we were to turn over the levers of regulation of these entities or more to politicians, you can imagine how tricky that would get. Now, of course, the advent of technology has raised some complexity questions. How do we regulate responsibly these kinds of environments where speech now is so pervasive? I think this is a good problem to have, and it's a uniquely American problem to have, too. The First Amendment doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. This is only a problem that we have in the United States, where you actually get to have the free competition of ideas, and that's the default setting for every piece of speech that happens in the United States. We've seen this conflict and how it works out across the pond. The EU right now is contemplating how they're going to tax these companies simply for the criminal activity of being these companies, right? Like, the EU wants to take these companies on just simply because they're big and they're successful at what they do, whereas the United States, thankfully, so far has taken a much more even hand. So we need to keep that in mind, that the First Amendment is tricky business, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's very, very important.
And hopefully it remains important to people like Tim Cook, who has been a pretty vocal advocate for free speech and the First Amendment and even the Fourth Amendment. So
I completely agree.
Hopefully consistency will prevail and constitutionality. Mattie, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kennedy. Good to see you.
You too. For more on Google CEO's testimony on Capitol Hill, go to foxbusiness.com.